This is like a basic setup which most people kind of ignore. We try and get how to measure sag. So it's called static sag, and obviously what we want to try and do is, especially for the rear of the motorcycle, it's a lot more important than the front. And if you kind of set up your motorcycle, you've got the rear set up right. Of course the front's got different dynamics, I understand, but at the same time, if you wanted to set the rear up, I just kind of show you how we do this. So the first thing you want to measure, basically you want to measure three lengths, right? One, when the rear is completely unloaded, and if you have a friend with you, then the easiest thing is to put on a stand. You roll up the motorcycle, and what you can get is basically sort of a completely unloaded situation. So the bike is fully unloaded, which means the suspension is extended. And don't touch any of your suspension settings at this point here. You're just trying to measure this, using this to figure out what you want to really do. And so you find a fixed point on your motorcycle. You need a tape. Find yourself a nice tape. This is from Muji. Nice red tape here. You find a fixed point anywhere on the rear of your motorcycle. So for example, I'm just going to use this. It's a fixed point, doesn't move. And I also find a fixed point for me to use the tape to measure. So for example, I start from here. Let's say I always use this particular point, and I bring it up to here, and I kind of know how many centimeters, mm, in terms of the height, or the length, if you want to call it that. So I have Srikanth here helping me with this. Basically, first I want to measure length 1, which is your fully extended length, which is this. So I use the same 2 points. I have him measure from this exact same point. You shouldn't be changing these points. Obviously, you want to measure length, and you're going to use the same points of measure every time. So for example, here you get, you read out the number.
70 mm. 70 centimeters.
It's 70 centimeters, right? So you've got 70 centimeters fully extended. Now what you want to do is, you want to put the bike back up, take it off the stand, and you want to measure the second component, which is, if a rider is not sitting on it, that is the weight of the motorcycle acting on the suspension. So I bump it up a few times just to sort of reset everything. No additional weight put on this. I'm just kind of holding the motorcycle to allow what I call motorcycle only, without the rider, not fully extended length. Let's call this L2, right? So we've got measured L1, which was your fully extended length. We've got L2, which is without any rider, right? So that's 67.8. The third thing you want to do, obviously you're going to be riding this bike, so you want to be fully kitted. So assume that you're, let's say 70 kilos, and you will be obviously wearing full gear, boots, helmet, jackets, a leather suit, gloves, etc. So you add on, let's say, another maybe anywhere from about 5 to 7 kilos to this is a fully rider position. And now you might need a third person's help, which is that you get on the bike, take it off the stand, and I have my trusted aid here, my trusted crash test dummy, Mr. Trishul, and so what we're going to do is bump this a few times. So let's assume this rider was about, let's say 80 kilos, I'm about 86, 85. So I'm going to crouch myself in this position, bump it a few times, again to reset the rear, and he's going to measure the rear suspension in terms of sag. So this would be called the third component, which is L3, right? 65.1. Right. So now you've got L1, you had L2 and L3. So let's recap. L1 was fully extended. L2 is without the rider, but the bike is upright and it's just the weight of the bike. And L3 is the rider with full gear. And you've measured these 3 lengths. And the simplest thing that you can do is, if you look at it, L1 is obviously the longest length, right? Because it's fully extended. L2 was with the weight of the motorcycle. L3 was with the rider. This on a board might be easier to understand what this is.
Was 68 point something, 68.4.
Let's assume this, right? So an L3 was
65.1.
65.1. So what did I say? L1 is fully extended. This was bike alone. This was rider plus bike, right? So basically what you want to do when you want to measure sag is L1 minus L2 plus L3 divided by 2. So if I take this, it's 70 minus 68.2. Obviously my markers are working really well. Plus 65.1 divided by 2. So it's 70 minus, that's your value, 66.65. And 70 minus 66.65 gives you 33.5 mm. A good sag value is anywhere from 30 to 35. Racers probably run anywhere from 20 to 30. But for a street setup, you want to be obviously on the higher end. If you're a racer, you want to be on the lower end. But somewhere in this, I'd like to say between 30 and 35 is a good setup for a beginner. And that's basically how you measure static sag. That's it. The lesson for the day.
Yeah.